positioned. And
I'm good.
all right. Good evening, Mrs. Dreffel. My name is Devin Jones. This is Timothy Wall. This is my AI research partner. This evening, we are bringing to you a recorded presentation of our research and its subsequent findings due to the inability to do so live. So we would like to begin with reading from our abstract. And I will start by telling you that this research project attempted to investigate attitudes toward artificial intelligence and society. Recent literature on the subject indicated mixed reactions from members of society in terms of what sectors and to what extent AI should be implemented. The research instrument, a survey, was used to gauge attitudes among 34 willing participants who have had some interaction with AI. Results showed both positive and negative reactions to current and future implementations, with knowledge and trust levels being key detriments of attitudes. So, just to kind of build on that, AI has become a very prominent role in all facets of society, and we were seeking to ascertain a general baseline of society's feelings towards that, whether or not they feel it's ultimately a benefit or a detriment to society. Which again brings us to our research questions, and those were three main questions that we were seeking to answer with this study. Firstly, we wanted to answer whether or not members of society are familiar with current AI implementations or iterations. Second question was, do members of society feel comfortable with existing implementations of AI? And the third question was, to what extent are members of society comfortable with future implementations of AI? For our literature review, successful research into the area of artificial intelligence demanded a pre-education on past and present developments in artificial intelligence, especially when integrated into large-scale societal projects. It also demands a survey of the philosophical and logistical problems present in wide-scale AI adoption. Accordingly, the literature reviewed treated these topics. Key points gleaned from literature study was that AI has been in the minds of pioneering individuals for longer than we might realize. This was indicative by Buchanan of 2006 and McCorduck 2004. AI implementation has grown to encompass entire transportation management systems for large metropolitan areas. Coletta and Kitchen 2016. Hindrances to AI expansion appear not so much in the technological realm, but rather the ethical and philosophical realm. And that was excerpts from Wilkes, Schutz, and Bostrom. And lastly, AI's expanse or reduction will be determined by the value systems of individuals affected by its implementation. And that was from Menino. So to put this in a different frame of words, what all of these people are really saying is AI can either be a helpful tool or a damning one. It is going to be on mankind, on how we program them, on that ultimately determines how that pans out. There's been a lot of debate as to how to go about that with no clear and concise answer, and we are still exploring the philosophical and ethical conundrums behind this. And I'd like to pass it to my research partner, Tim.
All right, thank you, Devin. So moving on to the next section of our poster, our methods section. So we used the paper survey as our research instrument. We collected 34 surveys. We were hoping for at least 30 completed surveys, so that's actually above our goal. We used 16 different questions in our paper research instrument survey. As Devin mentioned in our abstract and in our research questions, the point of the survey was to gather research regarding AI familiarity and comfort with selected individuals that chose to take part in our survey. We did want to ask about both transportation as its own industry its own focus also with general AI familiarity and comfort. We established informed consent through an informed consent form that we used. And essentially, we gave participants the ability to opt out of the survey at any time, including after they had filled it out. They both myself and Devin's contact information. That's actually an appendix in our research paper as well. But they could opt out at any time. So we do cover the ethical standards for research that we're maintaining in this course. We, as part of our survey, as part of our methods, we did have a couple of questions that were meant to validate input. And if those questions were not answered in a valid way, that survey or those surveys were discarded. And we actually had an example of that where someone had stated that they both did and did not use transportation applications in their AI usage. And we did throw that survey out because we felt that was not consistent. Those two answers were not consistent with each other, and we want to use that data. So I feel that our method was very comprehensive and covered a lot of both the ethical and the procedural elements that we needed for our surveys and for our research. Moving on to the results section, some demographic information. We had roughly 60% of our participants were female, 40% were male, 55% were older than 40, so we did have an older age group that we were working with. It didn't seem to determine the outcomes of much of our research. Is something that we did find, so we did want to record that and mention it. Regarding familiarity, we used two different metrics to determine familiarity, and one was the ability to explain AI to another person, and the other was use of AI. And we asked people how much they used AI in general, and also AI in transportation applications. You'll see the first graph going from top down, the first chart, I should say, shows that 79% of participants felt that they were somehow able to explain AI to another person. So we were dealing with a lot of people that had at least some comfort with explaining an element or concepts of AI to other people. So we found that promising. That was good to see. And over 50% of participants said they used AI somewhat in their daily lives, different applications, the Waze app for navigation, that kind of thing. And the percentage was higher with people that use transportation apps than with people that said they use other kinds of apps. So AI in transportation was a big thing for a lot of our participants. Taking a look at how comfortable participants were with current implementations of AI, there are some things that did stick out at us. If you look at the second chart, second figure in our list of or display of charts there, that middle one, you'll see that 73% of our participants said that they were they either had a positive feeling when they talked about AI and feeling. So really only over a quarter of them were explicitly negative in their view towards current AI implementations. And so we found that interesting. We did ask participants why it is that they told us they felt positive or negative regarding their current experience with AI. The positive reasons were a little bit mixed and quite frankly vague. A lot of people indicated other or unsure that question, but the negative reasons were actually pretty evident. There was a lack of knowledge among participants, lack of knowledge of AI among participants that felt negatively towards it. So that's something that I'll bring it back up in our implications, but we found that very interesting. Going to transportation specifically, we asked participants whether they used or did not use transportation apps currently, and that's something that we felt was an indicator of comfort. You're not going to use something if you're not comfortable with it. So for those that did use transportation apps, a lot of them cited ease of use. They felt that helped in their experience of AI and using AI every day with the system. And so those applications, those uses of AI were very easy for them. Those people that did not use transportation AI or didn't like it, again, sort of with the positives for those that used other applications in general. The negative answers for transportation were really quite varied and not very significant as far as one sticking out over another. So we did notice that as well. Going into future applications of AI, that third research question we had, and comfort with future implementations, whether they be wide or small. If you take a look at that final chart at the very bottom of our poster, you're going to see that 30% of our participants felt that AI should be decreased or destroyed in the future, which is actually pretty positive. It means 70% didn't feel that way. So we have a lot of people that are okay with AI at least staying the same or even expanding. And 56% of our participants felt that AI expansion should be industry specific, which was pretty interesting. And I'll get to that in a minute, and the implications as well. But that was a result that we found pretty significant. So moving on to the implications of what it is that we found, our results. A couple things that really stuck out to us, some key points. Familiarity seemed to be very high. It seemed to be a big reason when it was lacking why people didn't like AI. And it seemed like AI was a large driver of, familiarity was a large driver of people liking AI. And that's something that I think the AI industry could learn from in general, that, making things easy to use, making them easy to understand, that's going to help the AI industry in the future. If they want to get more people involved in AI and using it. As I mentioned before, it's not clear why people liked AI as far as general applications of it, but it was very clear why they did like AI for transportation. And again, that just comes back to that ease of use. And transportation would be a great segue industry for people that are real proponents, expansionists of AI, to really take AI to the next level in the future and do fuller implementations of it in society. The part about being industry specific is pretty important because what it means is that anybody that's trying to expand AI in the future, if we extrapolate our results to larger society, we can't just do it all at once. We have to do it piecemeal. You might have to do a couple industries at a time to sort of test cases and see how that goes. The transportation industry, again, from what we're seeing, seems to be almost like an ambassador for AI. So that's something to keep in mind. One other thing that was pretty interesting is we found that when we asked participants if they thought a human driver if an artificially intelligent driver could control a vehicle the same as a human driver, the answer was overwhelmingly no. And when we asked those participants why they said no, they actually said that they felt that the artificially intelligent driver would drive worse. So in the future, when those kinds of apps or AI implementations are done, it's really important, it seems from the research we've gathered, that people that are trying to expand that, they need to maintain a level of human control. That's going to be really important. As far as limits to our research, there were three that we identified. One was sample size. I think any research team is always looking for more samples. We're no different.
Absolutely.
We're able to go above our goal, which is great. But, we could have used 50 or 75. That would have been even better. More data points are always better. As far as the survey itself, we maybe could have done more questions. We did have 16, but we could have done 20 or 25, and that would have even more expanded our level of knowledge, especially getting into other industries, maybe looking at the defense industry and AI there, and also maybe some other things, banking, manufacturing, things like that. Lastly, there wasn't a lot of available literature on the specific angle that we took. There was literature on AI, but it was more technological and philosophical. We would have liked some personal testimonials, maybe of people who had interacted with AI in real ways and talked about whether they liked it or hated it, or somewhere in between. That would have been nice to have, but I think the literature on that is still developing. As far as some final thoughts, it seems that trust and knowledge are a big deal with people talking about AI. We've mentioned that before in different ways, but that's going to be really important, I think, going forward. Again, just to reiterate, transportation, it seems to be an ambassador industry. It seems like people are more apt to use AI in transportation. They like it more. They find the experience more enjoyable. So again, something just to reiterate and to underline. And lastly, it's really important, I think, for people that are going to be using AI or trying to develop AI to realize that incrementalism is really important. You can't just spread AI on the population from a certain day and think that it's fine. We need to go ahead, and it seems from the results that we gathered, we're going to need to really take it a step at a time, try AI in one application, and if it doesn't work, we have to be able to say, okay, well, we're going to go ahead and pull that back now. And just because we've implemented it, there may be times when we may need to go ahead and pull something back. And that happens in any industry. It should happen in AI as well. So that's really it for our projects, our implementations, and all the different ways that we collected and analyzed our data.
I'd like to just add something to Tim's conclusion. To really understand where AI is going, we have to assess where it has to go. And while we did touch on, the ethical perplexities of this situation, it is of the utmost importance that we stress it is not a black and white answer, because it really does boil down to how you can program another, or rather a machine with sentience. So, and how and what's acceptable. So you have to, excuse me. So, and what's acceptable in one culture may not be acceptable in another. So how do you, identify parameters that are all inclusive? How do you, ensure that machines don't inherit, mankind's nature to dominate? That's at the core of humanity, to dominate, others and ourselves. So how can we prevent that from being a trait that manifests in our AI counterparts? During our research, Tim had brought up a very good point of how a car would discern, who best to save, the people within the car, or the people that are going to be impacted, the other passengers in the other vehicle. And there is no good and true answer to that. So it's these perplexities and others that we have to sort through and come to a common understanding before we can really progress further. Even Professor Stephen Hawking, who passed away 2018, had stressed that AI can either be the best instrument for mankind, or it will ultimately be our undoing. But he did emphasize that will largely be determined on how programmers implement ethics in this field. So that is of paramount importance that we, like I said prior, establish some type of parameters. One suggestion that had come to mind for me is, as I said, there are so many various cultures and backgrounds that it would be difficult to account for all facets of virtue or ethics. Maybe a governing council like the UN should get together to establish a baseline set of principles that everyone agrees to work on, and then kind of work out from there. Again, it's not a clear nor concise answer, but I think it would certainly be a viable start. And Tim, if you have anything else, please.
No, I think we've pretty much got everything. So this is where we would be taking questions, and really would depend, Professor Druff, on anything that you have. But I think any questions you do have would be properly answered inside of the research paper, which you'll be able to read once we turn that in, and that will be happening tonight. Well, that's pretty much it.
Yes. Thank you for your time, Professor.